Good morning. Miss Freed, Miss Sloth is here to teach you today on this Wednesday. Today on our agenda we have morning work with your addresses and capitalization and identifying polygons, math, pages 7, 8, and 9, ELA, where we're reading The Land of Counterpane. If you didn't know what counterpane was, the definition is on the bottom, and Math Story 8.2. I hope that song doesn't get stuck in your head all day. My goal today for today's video is to try to make it a little bit faster. As you probably noticed in the other ones, I've sped it up so my voice sounds a little bit mousy, which I knew you wouldn't mind, but I'm trying to make this one more concise. So I'm gonna read Be the Sun, Not the Salt. I'm gonna roll through the answers, explain where I feel like is necessary, but try not to make this video quite as long. So let's dive in. Today's lesson from Be the Sun, Not the Salt is Lesson 17, to help others keep perspective. So remember, perspective is the way that we see something and the way that we might feel about something. So perspective is the same thing as point of view. So whether you use humor or jokes, in worst case scenarios or other strategies, learning to keep things in perspective is an important skill to develop, which is why I encourage you to practice quietly seeing the bigger picture. The ability to see the forest separate from the trees comes with age and experience, for sure, but almost anyone at any age can give us perspective. Have you ever witnessed a young child watching two adults get upset over nothing and ask, "Mommy, why are those people so mad?" Kids are brilliant at seeing the simple things adults cannot. When you help others find perspective, you can be a breath of fresh air, especially if you take time to evaluate their unique situation. If you succeed, you can help turn a dark situation completely around. How heliotropic is that? Offering your perspective to others is not a matter of offering your opinion, since your life and ideals may not translate to theirs. Giving your opinion may sometimes be pouring salt on their roots. It's good to check to see if a person is open to what you have to say. If your intentions are sincere, chances are you will be helpful. Say hi to Dr. John or Dr. Weiss. Dr. Weiss, wave to the camera. He's been working at the hospital lots of hours, helping out. He has a day off today, so that is why he is here and hanging out. Let's go over morning work. Make sure that you have everything out in front of you. That's gonna make the video much more concise and fast for you as well. So make sure you have your morning work. Then underneath your morning work, go ahead and put that math workbook, then your ELA workbook, and finally your math story. So that's kind of how I stack everything in my videos anyways, so that I can flip through quickly one on top of the other. Does that sound good? Awesome. So I'm not gonna go over the address side because the address side is all based on capitalization, and the example at the top is very clear about what the expectations for you are and the work below that. And also I know that your parents are smart cookies, so if you do need help, make sure that you ask them. I think they can help you with the capitalization. In terms of the polygon sheet on the back, identifying polygons, today I'll send you that Number Rocks video to review the names of polygons. As you can see here, when I did the work myself, I labeled every single side so that I knew that I didn't miss a side or add an extra side. Here are the answers. Number 1 is pentagon, 2 is heptagon, 3 is pentagon, 4 hexagon, 5 nonagon, 6 decagon, 7 nonagon, 8 octagon, 9 decagon, 10 heptagon, 11 pentagon, and 12 nonagon. So as you can see, a lot of these have similar shapes to a stop sign, right? And you might think that they all have the same amount of sides, but when you really take the time to label and count them, you'll notice that a lot of them are quite different. So make sure that if you need to fix any of those, you do that after the video, or you can pause it here and correct now. Let's move on to math. Oh my gosh, we've only been working for 5 minutes. We're speeding through. I got this. So let's start on page 7 where we have the number 10 and we have the pictograph and the key laid out very clearly for us at the bottom. So we know that each pen is worth 5 pens. The question asks, the picture graph shows the number of pens sold in the last 4 days in an office supply store. And we know that each pen on the graph is actually value. Its value is 5 pens. The question asks which day, so I know that it's only gonna have one answer because it's asking me about what day, which day, singular, shows 10 fewer pens. So I'm thinking fewer means less than, sold than the greatest number of pens sold. So I know that when I'm asking, it's a than question, I know that they're asking me to essentially compare which one is the specific category versus another. So in this case, we're looking for which day is 10 less than the greatest day. So as I'm going through, you can see that I ticked each pen as I was counting by 5s to make sure that I didn't miss any. I labeled them on the side here, and I also labeled them next to my answer choices to make sure that I was keeping on track. So you can see here I wrote 40 pens next to Monday, 30 next to Tuesday, 25 next to Wednesday, and 25 next to Thursday. I wrote greatest at Monday, so I knew which one I was comparing, and I saw that Tuesday is 10 less than the greatest, which is Monday, 30 is 10 less than 40, therefore the answer is B, Tuesday. Ooh, this question was really good. I hope that you took the time to read this carefully and went through and didn't rush it. I apologize for the beeping outside of my apartment. I'm gonna pause it. So they're giving you a model here, so you don't even have to draw your own model to really make a mind movie of what's happening. It says Julian has 56 books. He arranges them into groups as shown below. The question itself asks you to write an expression or an equation, right? That could be used to find the number of books in each group. And you know that when you hear the word each, we think of one singular. So when I was looking at this, I actually took the time to count each book so I knew how many were in each group, and then I could figure out how I would solve it from there. So I saw that there's 8 in each group, and then I counted the number of groups as well. So I know that I'm given a total, I'm given the amount of groups, and I'm searching for the amount in each group. So I know that I'm given a total and I'm dispersing them into equal groups, which makes me think of the operation division. So I know that if I take the total, which is 56, divide them by 7 groups, which is the total amount of groups in the model, that I'm going to get the amount of books in each group. So the answer here is 56 divided by 7. Part B asks, Julian buys 16 more books, more. So the whole time, remember that whole unit that we did where we would just read word problems and identify what operation we should do? Some word problems had one operation, some word problems had more than one. So I'm already thinking, Julian buys 16 more books. I'm thinking addition, right? If you're getting 16 more, that's addition. And groups them in the same way as his other books. Write an equation to show how many groups of books, G, Julian has in all, then solve. So this is really important that you read this question carefully because this one is asking how many groups, not how many books are in each group. So if you read it carefully, you would have been able to identify that the first thing you would have to do is add 56 plus 16 and divide it by 8, because this time it's telling you that he groups them the same way, meaning that in each group he puts 8 books. It's asking now if he were to have more books, 56 plus 16, which equals 72, put 8 in each group, how many groups would he have? That would be essentially 56 plus 16 divided by 8, or 72 divided by 8, and your answer is 9 groups. And lastly, we have this model and fraction question on the back. It asks, which number shows a fraction equivalent to that fraction in the model? And as you can see, I'm constantly translating and writing vocabulary next to the questions to help me understand deeper. And I know that equivalent means equal to, so I can reread it the second time that I read with more simple language. So I know that it's asking me which fraction is equal to 2/8, because I know that there's 2 pieces shaded and 8 pieces total. As I'm looking through, I'm looking at the spaces in between the number line. Remember, that's how we count. I know that 1 whole is the same numerator as denominator. So I know that A is showing me 6/8. That can't be equal to 2/8. B is showing me 3/8, which can't be equivalent to 2/8. Then I'm noticing both C and D are broken up into fourths. C has 3/4 marked and D has 1/4 marked. So as you can see, I did the work for both on the side using what we do on the bottom, we must do to the top, or what we do to the top, we must do to the bottom. As you can tell, for 3/4, 4 times 2 equals 8. 3 times 2 does not equal 2. So 3/4 and 3/8 cannot be, or excuse me, 3/4 and 2/8 cannot be equivalent. However, when I did the matching on 1/4 and 2/8, 4 times 2 equals 8, 1 times 2 equals 2, this worked out smoothly. The answer is D. All right, so I hope math went well today. I know that this book is kind of combining a lot of different things that we've learned together, which makes it such a good resource at a time like this, because it's constantly asking you to think back to the beginning of the year and the middle of the year and see what you're retaining and what you're not, and what, when we get back together, what you need to focus on. Let's move to ELA. So it says The Land of Counterpane, A Child's Garden of Verses by Robert Louis Stevenson, published by Charles Scribner's Son in 1885. That's a long time ago. So as I was reading, I noticed that this has a lot of like kind of formal vocabulary. It feels like an old poem, doesn't it? But as I read it, I felt myself connecting more and more to it, especially in our lives today where we're kind of stuck at home, right? So I'm going to read this poem to you, and I'm going to share my jots as I read. Okay, so make sure that you have your ELA poem in front of you as well, so you can follow along with your strong pointer finger. When I was sick and lay abed, I had 2 pillows at my head, and all my toys beside me lay to keep me happy all day. So the jot that I wrote here was sick but had toys, because I can gather that he's sick in bed, but he says that his toys keep him happy, so that's why I jotted that at the side. Now this is called a stanza, so each section of a poem is called a stanza. Stanza 2 says, "And sometimes for an hour or so, I watch my leaden soldiers go, with different uniforms and drills, among the bedclothes through the hills." I'm not gonna lie, I read this stanza about 7 times because I did not understand and I didn't want to move on until I understood what the text was talking about. Finally, I gathered that the soldiers must be some of the toys that he has in his bed. And so I wrote imagination on the side because he's clearly envisioning this world outside of him being sick in his bed. "And sometimes I sent my ships and fleets all up and down among the sheets, or brought my trees and houses out and planted cities all about." So I wrote imagining on the side because there's a lot going on here, and I'm assuming that he's playing with his toys as he's doing this. "I was the giant, great and still, that sits upon the pillow hill." So everything started connecting here for me. So I'm like, oh, okay, he is so much bigger than his toys. He's the giant sitting upon the pillows of his bed, which is the pillow hill. "And sees before him dale and plain, the pleasant land of counterpane." And then I saw at the bottom, the counterpane means a bed, spread, or quilt. So it's all coming together for me. He's this giant on the city of his bed. So I wrote, his bed is the land for his toys. For my main idea, I have the character is the narrator. The problem in this poem is that he's sick, or she's sick. I honestly don't know which gender it is. The solution is that he uses his imagination to help himself stay entertained while he's sick in bed. And the lesson learned is to make a negative situation into a positive one. So we only had 4 questions for today's ELA. I'm gonna go through these quite quickly for the purpose of time. So part A, I got answer A because I already wrote my main idea. That's all I had to review for this question. And A says, anything can be fun when you imagine, which was exactly matching my lesson learned. I did go through the other questions and evaluated them equally as well, but that was the best answer. Part B was somewhat of a difficult question for me, but I realized that the only one that matches the idea of using your imagination to have fun was that I was the giant, great and still. That's showing that he's imagining himself on top of this city on his bed. Number 12 is asking which stanza does the speaker begin to describe things that are not really happening. I went back in stanza 1, he's actually talking about himself really being sick in bed, so I knew that that was real, what was happening. And then in stanza 2, he starts talking about his soldiers, so that is why the answer is 2. And number 13 says, select the 2 choices that best describe the person speaking in the poem. So we're looking for what types of characteristics does this narrator have. And the answer is A, a person who likes to imagine things, because that's the entire main idea, and C, a person who does not mind spending time alone. And the reason why C is the other answer is honestly because the other answers just don't apply. So a person who's afraid to try anything new, that was never implied in the poem. A person who cannot stand being homesick, he seems to be having a fine time. A person who has traveled around the world, no, he doesn't imply that. Or a person who would rather be outdoors than indoors, he never says that he wishes he was outside. So those are the answers to ELA. And finally, we have our rock climbing math story 8.2. The question is, a total of 54 rock climbers signed up for a rock climbing trip. The leader put the climbers into 6 equal groups. How many climbers were in each group? So I know that it's asking me how many climbers were in one single group. So I'm noticing that a lot of the math stories that we're working with recently are really just asking you, are you able to come up with a strong plan of attack, and are you able to identify what operations you should be doing? So I'm noticing that it's giving me the total of 54 rock climbers. I know that they are dispersed into 6 equal groups, which is making me think of the operation, let's see, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I know that that operation is division. So after I jotted what I was solving for at the bottom, I wrote my plan of attack, which is 54 divided by 6 equal groups is going to get me the number in each group. To make sure that I was visualizing this correctly, I did a model first. And as you can see, I wrote 5 in each of these because I have 6 equal groups, and I know based on my math facts that 6 groups of 5 is equal to 30, which is not yet at 54. So to make my life easier, instead of counting by ones the entire time to get to 54, I started with 5. So I did 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So I was at 30. I knew I had to get to 54. Then I continued to count by ones until I got to a total of 54. Then I counted how many was in one single group, which was 9. Checked my work on the side where I did 54 divided by 6 equals 9 in each group, labeled them to make sure I knew what I was doing correctly. Then I have my answer is 9. The unit is climbers, and the equation is 54 divided by 6 equals 9. So we are making great time today. I hope that you had all of your work completed before you watch this video. I hope that the work is feeling challenging but also productive for you. I know that it can feel a little bit repetitive, but it's really good stuff. So if you're continuing to do this each and every day, you're really going to stay on top of those 3rd grade standards, which is ultimately our goal. So if you have not been reading Tales of Despereaux with us, you can pause the video now, go ahead and stop and continue on with your day. If you have been reading Tales of Despereaux, go ahead and get cozy because we are going to dive in. If you're deciding today for the first time, like, I wish that I'd been reading with everyone, you can always go back to the past videos, slide all the way to the end where we start reading Tales of Despereaux, listen to the last 2 days, and then jump in on this 3rd video. All right, so we're dealing with Roscoe in the dungeon. And right now we're starting chapter 18 called Confessions. Roscoe went, as Botticelli told him he must do, to torment the new prisoner and take the red cloth from him. The man was sitting with his legs stretched out straight in front of him, chained to the floor. The red cloth was still draped over his shoulders. Roscoe squeezed through the bars and crept slowly over the damp, weeping stones of the cell floor. When he was close to the man, he said, "Ah, welcome, welcome. We are delighted to have you." The man lit a match and looked at Roscoe. Roscoe stared longingly into the light. "Go on," said the prisoner. He waved a hand in the direction of Roscoe, and the match went out. "You're nothing but a rat." "I am," said Roscoe. "Exactly that, a rat. Allow me to congratulate you on your very astute powers of observation." "What do you want, rat?" "What do I want? Nothing. Nothing for my sake, that is. I have come for you. I have come to keep you company here in the dark." He crawled closer to the man. "I don't need a company of a rat." "What about the solace of a sympathetic ear can provide?" "Huh?" "Would you like to confess your sins?" "To a rat? Are you kidding me?" "Come on now," said Roscoe. "Close your eyes. Pretend that I'm not a rat. Pretend I'm nothing but a voice in the darkness. A voice that cares." The prisoner closed his eyes. "All right," he said. "I'll tell you, but I'm telling you because there ain't no point in not telling you. No point in keeping secrets from a dirty little rat. I ain't in such a desperate way that I need to lie to a rat." The man cleared his throat. "I'm here for stealing 6 cows, 2 jerseys, and 4 guinea pigs. Cow theft. That's my crime." He opened his eyes and stared into the darkness. He laughed. He closed his eyes again. "But there's something else I'd done. Many years ago. Another crime. But they don't know of it." "Go on," said Roscoe softly. He crept closer. He allowed one paw to touch the magical red cloth. "I traded my daughter for this red tablecloth, for a handful of cigarettes." "Ugh," said Roscoe. He was not alarmed to hear of such a hideous thing. His parents, after all, had not much cared for him, and certainly, if there was a profit in it, they would have sold him. And then, too, Botticelli, one lazy Sunday afternoon, had recited from memory all the confessions he had heard from prisoners. What humans were capable of came as no surprise to Roscoe. "And then," said the man. "And then," encouraged Roscoe. "And then I've done the worst thing of all. I walked away from her. She was crying out loud, and I didn't look back. I did not. Oh, Lord, I kept walking." The prisoner cleared his throat. He sniffed. "Ah," Roscoe said. "Yes, I see." By now he was standing so that all 4 of his paws were touching the red cloth. "Do you find comfort in this cloth that you sold your child for?" "It's warm," said the man. "Was it worth selling your daughter?" "I like the color of it." "Does the cloth remind you of what you have done wrong?" "It does," the prisoner said. He sniffed. "It does." "Allow me to ease your pain," said Roscoe. He stood on his hind legs and bowed at the waist. "I will take this cloth so that you no longer suffer," he said. The rat took hold of the tablecloth in his strong teeth and pulled it off the shoulders of the man. "Hey, see here, I want that back." But Roscoe, reader, was quick. He pulled the tablecloth through the bars of the cell, whoosh, like magic trick in reverse. "Hey!" shouted the prisoner. "Bring that back. It's all I got." "Yes," said Roscoe, "and that is exactly why I must have it." "You dirty rat!" shouted the prisoner. "Yes," said Roscoe, "that is right. The most accurate." And then he left the man and dragged the tablecloth back to his nest and considered it. What a disappointment it was! Looking at it, Roscoe knew that Botticelli was wrong. What Roscoe wanted, what he needed, was not the cloth at all, but the light that had shone behind it. He wanted to be filled, flooded, blinded again with light. And for that, reader, the rat knew that he must go upstairs. All right, that's all for today. I hope you guys have a lovely Wednesday. I know it's not super sunny, but get outside and get some fresh air. I miss you all terribly, and I will see you tomorrow.